Are we filming? We're action. All right.
Wow.
All right. Here we go. First episode of Table 604. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. My name's Hugo. This podcast is about anything related to food. So anything from farmers, fishermen, restaurant owners, and the whole shebang pretty much. And today I have my friend Casey.
Hey.
She's a full-on expert about bees. I remember the first time we met, when you were when you told me you were making honey and all these crazy facts about bees. I was so memorized, and I was like, oh my god, this girl's super cool. So super thankful for you to coming on the first episode. I hope you're not too shy or anything.
Oh no, I'm so excited.
Cool.
I'm honored
Awesome.
to be here. This is great.
Yeah. So again, this is gonna be super casual. Maybe we can just start talking about how we met, maybe at the beginning, and then we'll just go from there. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you did with before the train, and then just what kind of person you were, and just go from there, pretty much.
That sounds good.
Cool. So where did you grow up, actually? Because I don't even actually know.
So I grew up in North Delta.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I grew up in North Delta. Lived there all my life. Always wanted to travel and get into horticulture.
Yeah.
So went traveling for a while as a 18-year-old. Went to Europe and then somehow wound up on the Rocky Mountaineer train. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And so I did that for 7 years.
Right.
But
sorry to interrupt you. Before we forget, what is the Rocky Mountaineer?
The Rocky Mountaineer is a luxury first-class train that brings you across Western Canada.
Yeah.
And it's you basically, we worked on board as hosts.
Yes, we did.
So we told commentary. We talked. We served guests drinks and food, and we basically traveled for the entire summer and spent most of our summers in Kamloops. And yeah,
it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool gig.
It was fun. We met really amazing people. So that was the biggest thing. And
how old were you when you started working on the train?
I was 19 when I started.
19?
Yeah. And I'm 29 now.
Okay.
So I was almost a full 10 years working in tourism. Yeah.
Interesting.
So then what happened? So then I wanted to take a break from the train because, you make good money and you kind of get bored of it after a while. Yeah. And so I looked into going to horticulture, but I didn't want to do 4 years of school and then come out with a degree that might not benefit me. So I ended up finding this weird beekeeping course, and I had some money, so I took it, and it was a year program. Okay. And it was a university program, and I went to Kwantlen.
Where is that?
Kwantlen College in Cloverdale.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
So Kwantlen, Cloverdale.
Okay, cool.
And then we, what did we do? So we did a full 6 months of marketing, business, biology on bees. Then we went and worked for 6 months in Alberta, and we did a practicum, and that was really interesting. Okay. So I worked for a guy in Alberta with 4,000 beehives, and he was the largest pollen producer in North America.
What?
So we produced 80,000 pounds of pollen. We produced double that in honey, and he would ship all his stuff he produced to Japan, across Canada. So huge exporter.
Oh my god!
And I just spent 6 months learning from him.
Okay.
And then came back to BC and was okay, I'm gonna start my own thing, not to that extent, but do my own small business on the side. And make my own honey and hive products.
So was he kind of like a mentor for you, when you were doing that? And were you how did that work? Did you find him on Google, or was it that part of the school and you're oh, go work for this guy and then just figure it out?
Yeah, so they do. They set you up with somebody.
Okay,
so,
cool.
I met him actually. We were based out of the Honeybee Center, which is on Fraser Highway.
Okay.
And, 176, I believe it is. And so he actually showed up because he brings his bees down from Alberta to pollinate blueberries.
That's so cool.
And then he brings them all back up to Alberta to go do all the canola and all the sweet clover. Okay. So he came in. They had told me they had set me up with a mentor. Okay. So yeah, that exact word. And then he showed up. He's like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Come meet my family. Come meet my wife. They lived in some mansion out in Aldergrove. So I drove out there, met them all. And then we ended up going out there. Okay. I worked for him for probably a month in BC, just getting the blueberry hives ready in that. And we packed them all up on a semi-trucks. And then we shipped them back to Alberta. So yeah, that's how I met him. I met him really briefly through the school. That's so cool. He took me with him and all of his Filipino foreign workers out there as well. Yeah. So yeah, we all lived out there for about 6 months. In a bunkhouse.
Where do you, in a bunkhouse?
Yeah.
On his property or
on his property?
And is it a big property? I know we don't have pictures, or it doesn't really matter too much. But how, can you describe it to us? What is it like? Is it a farm or there's just a bunch of little hives everywhere? I don't know, and I'm sure they don't know too. So
okay, so Alberta, northern Alberta. about 4 hours east of Grand Prairie. Was in a little hamlet. A hamlet's like almost like a little town even, with like maybe 6 houses in it. And so we were like, probably, if you want to call us a family, if we were like the biggest family in the little hamlet. So we're like in a valley. There's rivers all around us. He's got this, probably it's about, I don't know, like 70-acre property. Pretty big, huge like workshop on it, storage, warehouse. Whoa. He does all his honey extraction there. Him and his family lived in like a bunkhouse that was like kind of like it was built on top of the shop. So they were living there while they built their house elsewhere.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then we lived in like literally like a trailer that was like sitting out in the middle of the yard.
Okay.
So me and I think there were 4 guys from the Philippines. Okay. Eventually a few more came and a couple girls came from the Philippines.
That's always nice.
Yeah, it was nice. So like when we got there, I remember like walking into the room and there was like mouse turds everywhere, and the bathroom system was sketchy, and it was all well water. But he had like 100 hives just sitting in the yard, and he's like, yeah, these are just a few of them. The rest of them were kept on like fields like all around the area. Okay. So it's just a big farming like area.
That's so cool.
It's like Peace region, I guess you could call it.
Okay.
So it's all like old timer farmers who do like sweet clover canola. Okay. And it's just like he had his 4,000 hives like strewed all throughout these different places.
4,000 hives.
Yeah.
And when you say hives, like you're talking about those little white boxes?
Yeah.
4,000.
4,000 of those. So you usually have 4 of them, 4 of those white boxes on a pallet.
Okay.
And then that allows the forklift to like lift them up, move them around.
That's smart.
So he'd have them in groups of 4, and you'd have like probably, I'd say normally like 100 per yard. Okay. So if you had 4,000, you had a lot of yards, and we would drive all around to all these different farms through like different farm gates, through meadows. We had all these 4x4 trucks. That's cool. We would just tend to the bees. Okay. Yeah.
And so like, okay, so I have so many questions to go from there. I'll try to organize myself for 1 second here. Like, so what would you do there? Like, obviously you said you worked there for like 6 months or whatever. Like, so what was like the first like beginning stage of that? Like, what did they teach you, and what were you supposed to do there when you were working there?
So first thing was basically we were starting out in spring. Okay. So I got up there probably around March. Gotcha. And oddly enough, it snowed in Alberta in March, like full on snowed. So it kind of set us back. So we ended up like feeding the bees, because now there wasn't anything blossoming. Right. There was no food. So we actually would go out with these trucks and like these giant tanks of sugar syrup with like a big Honda pump on there, motor. And we would have like a fire hose type deal. And we'd go to every hive and fill up each hive with sugar syrup.
Are you serious? And how long would you like hold it for? Like,
it was like
is there a timer?
4 seconds. You're like, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And like literally it'd be like, I remember doing in the pouring rain, I'm getting like stung by bees. I'm like covered in sugar syrup. Yeah. And we would just fill hives. And so there's 4,000 of them. So we could probably do a yard in like 30 minutes. Okay. But that also involves taking the lids off all the beehives. Right. Yeah. It's a process. Smoking them so they don't sting you.
Oh my God.
Filling their feeders with sugar syrup. Yeah. And then moving on to the next yard.
And so how many of you guys were working like per truck? Like, was it just like all of you guys just like, all right, let's go, let's tackle this all together, and you do this, you do that? Or was it more like you're in groups of people? And like, how did that work?
Yeah, usually groups of people. So I think we had like a fleet of like 4 trucks. Okay. So it usually pair us off of like 2 or 3 people each truck, and then we'd go, and everyone kind of had their own job. Like I started, I was a bit of a swamper, so like I'd help like throw like the ratchet straps over the truck and make sure everything was tied down. Okay. And then one guy would be like spraying all the beehives with sugar. Okay. And then someone else would be flipping the lids off and then putting the lids back on. Yeah. And it's just like nonstop. Like it's like back-breaking work after you do like that many. Yeah. So yeah, everyone had a job. Okay. Yeah.
And like, what was like, so how many times do you think you get stung a day? Like,
so depending. If you did
get stung multiple times a day.
Yeah, it was usually like between 3 to 5 times. Okay. And usually they get you like on your ankles. Oh yeah. Wherever your skin's exposed. Yeah. They would sting you, but you wouldn't always feel it because they'd get onto your like suit. Yeah. And then you'd like later go home and you'd have like stingers all over you.
You have to like pluck them out? Like,
no, you just kind of look at them and be like, oh, I'll take this off, or I'll throw this in the wash.
Okay. Yeah. So what would you wear? Like obviously like long pieces of like clothing and stuff. Like did they give you like any gear? Like can you tell us a little bit more like what you would wear, I guess?
Yeah. So I guess when I showed up, he bought me like my host suit. That's the part of the deal. So he bought everyone their own suit.
And how much are those, you think?
They could be like up to $200.
Okay, that's not too bad.
quality.
Yeah.
So you get like the one, so it's basically like a white painter suit, almost like what you see a typical beekeeper wearing. And then you get the veil.
Okay.
And I had the one where you kind of look like like an astronaut, like almost like a hazmat suit.
So cool.
So you got like the screen on your face.
Yeah.
And then I think he had like kind of a bunch of supplies. Like you have your smoker.
Okay.
He supplied those for everyone to share.
Cool.
He had like these hive tools, which is like a pry bar that you use to open up all the hives. So you have one tool and you have a smoker.
Okay.
And then he gives you your suit and that's all you wear. I'd usually wear like in the summertime in Alberta.
Yeah.
It like most people just go nude under them
because
it's so hot. Like you're sweating buckets, but you can't take your suit off or your veil off because the bees will get in and sting you. So like you're drinking water like through the veil.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You would just like get in the car and just open it? Like you have no like
you couldn't even open it in the car.
Oh my god.
Like sometimes you'd be eating lunch like with your suit on and you'd be just like sticking your hand like through the zipper to get food in because you just have bees everywhere.
Oh my god.
Like thousands.
Like so like pretty much like let's say you go from one section to the other, there's just bees everywhere like outside.
Yeah.
Aren't they pretty territorial? Like don't they have to be spaced out? Like don't they fight? Or I'm not too sure. Like
well they do. So like they have their hives and that's their hive and they know it's their hive because bees all communicate by pheromones.
Okay, cool.
So like each hive smells different. Each queen smells different. So like if you show up and you don't smell like the others, you're technically not really allowed in. So they'll fight you off. But the thing was when there's honey involved and you're taking honey from them, like that was when we saw a lot of them. You'd have this truck with like a bunch of boxes of honey that we're bringing back to the shop to extract.
Okay.
And they would follow us because they're now like trying to rob it back. So it's sad, but you'd
so
have
mean.
like, it is mean. It is. And that's when they're most aggressive because they're like, we hate you now. And we'd have like thousands of them like swarming the hives. And then you'd stop for lunch because you're not going to drive 20 kilometers every time you get boxes. So you'd stop. And they would just be coming in through the windows. They'd already be in the windows. They'd be in the car. And, like, sometimes they would, like, take it all back before we got back to the shop.
Wait, what do you mean take it back? Like they're able to get in and, like, take it back?
Yeah, like they go in and just like a flower, they go in, but they hop on, like, the boxes and they stick their little their little tongues or proboscises in and they suck all the honey up and then they fly back. And, like, the way bees work is when they find a source where there's nectar, they go and tell the other ones with that little waggle dance they do. And then they all go and they all find that source. So, like, all it takes is one bee from one hive and it'll bring, like, the rest of them over.
Oh, my God.
And there's, like, 80,000 bees in a hive. So you're like, oh, okay, if you got 4,000 hives plus the other guys who are beekeeping, there's thousands of bees.
Oh, my God.
So it's, like, chaos.
So, like, back, like, so it was, like, were the hives, like, kind of spaced away from, like, where you were staying? Or is there literally hives everywhere? I think you said they're close by where you're staying, but, like, can you go outside, go to the bathroom, and not get attacked by a bee? Or is this kind of...
Like, bees are fairly subdued.
Okay.
Like, if you walk past, like, we had 100 beehives probably, like, 5 meters from where we were living in our bunkhouse. And you could walk past them every morning. They don't care.
Really?
But it's not until you're opening them up and, like, rattling around that they get really... like aggressive with you.
Yeah.
And I guess like commercial beekeeping especially, which is what we were doing, because there's so much to do, like any commercial farming, it's a little rougher than like what I do now, which is like a lot more gentler.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely nicer.
Yeah, I'm nicer and I'm like okay, I have maybe like a max of 10 hives at a time.
Okay.
So I'm like, if half of them die, like that's crazy. That's a 50% loss.
That's a big loss.
So I'd be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so like what was like the most like memorable memory from like that experience? Like, and there's any like things that you've learned that you obviously you do apply, but like what are the things you've taken the most from that experience, would you say?
So one of the coolest things I did, he got me to start rearing queens, which literally means like the bees will have like one of those frames of where they put their honeycomb. Okay. But instead of putting honey, the queen will lay a bunch of eggs. Okay. And at a specific stage when the larvae is developing, you actually take it and you bring it into like a special shop. Okay. And you sit there and you use this like little tool, which is a quail feather. Okay. And you scoop up the larvae and you stick it into these cups. Okay. And then they're almost like just little, almost the size of like a thumbtack or a thimble. Okay. And they sit in the frames and you put it back into the beehive. Right. And what the bees do is they raise the specific, these little cups to be queen bees. And queen bee cells, they look like peanuts. So they'll start to develop in like a vertical way. Okay. And then after, there's a specific timing, I think it's 18 days, it takes for these cells to develop.
Right.
You take them out before they hatch.
Yeah.
And then you put them in different colonies to like create new colonies. So basically you need like a couple thousand bees and a queen cell to make a new beehive.
Interesting.
So he was breeding his own queens.
Wow.
And we would breed like, sometimes we had about 180 every month.
Okay.
So brand new queens to put in these boxes to start like 180 new hives.
Oh my God.
So what I would do is I would take these cells, which are super delicate.
Yeah.
We'd carry them in like a cooler, like a makeshift like transport like beverage cooler.
Okay.
And we go to each yard and I'd go in and I would put them in there gently and then come back in 3 days when she had hatched and look for her.
Oh my God.
And then she'd start laying, and then sometimes we'd catch the queens and we would like use them to put into different hives if the other queens died. So it was like you're kind of playing God.
Right. Yeah, a little bit there.
Yeah. It's kind of confusing.
And like, don't the bees, like, don't they get upset about that? Like, to bring like a new queen, or are they all like, oh my God, your highness, you're here. Like, we're good.
Like, if they don't know her smell, they'll kill her. So you have to like be really gentle how you do it. So a lot of times we'd put them in these little cages and then we'd slowly release them. You'd get like a cage with like a little queen in it. And they're like really tiny.
Yeah.
And then you'd put a marshmallow in the entrance of it.
Like a marshmallow, like the ones you roast on fire.
Yeah, but like a mini one, like the mini baking ones. And you'd stick it in the hole of the queen cage where she would normally come out from.
Right.
And then you would stick that into the hive. And then over a course of like 3 days, it would take for them to kind of smell her, and they would touch her through like the bars of the cage, basically.
Oh, so it's like literally a cage.
It's literally
it's not like a little valve or like a little thing of glass. It's like literally a cage.
No, it's literally like a cage. Like they can stick their little feet through it, and they touch her, and then they kind of spread her scent.
Right.
But in the meantime, they're also eating the marshmallow away, and then it slowly releases her.
Okay.
And then she starts to lay eggs, and they're like, "Okay, we like you now."
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And like, so okay, like, how do like queens lay eggs? Like, don't they have to like have sex with like bees? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is where bees are super like gnarly. So so queen bees, they mate once. They go on a mating flight once, and it's bees are not incestual, so they only mate with other bees. Like from other colonies.
Right.
So what she'll do is she will go to the spot in the sky. It's usually like 10 meters high up in the air, and all of them congregate there. All the drones, which are the male bees, and the queens. And she'll mate with the drones, and when she mates with them, she like rips their genitalia out, and they drop and they die. And then she continues to mate with usually about up to 30 of them. And then she stores all the sperm in this like spermatheca, which is like a basically like humans don't have it, but she stores a sperm, and then she goes back to the hive. And then what she does for the rest of her life is she fertilizes the eggs with that sperm, and she lays eggs. So she'll kill a bunch of male bees when she mates with them, and then she basically just continues on until the hive decides that she's too old to be the queen anymore. So then they'll take one of her daughters and they'll turn that into a queen by feeding it royal jelly. And royal jelly is a substance that makes them really strong.
Wait, what is royal jelly? Before we forget this, what is royal jelly?
So royal jelly is this like secretion that comes from their bodies. And basically royal jelly, like they don't give it to any other bee, only the ones that are going to become queen. And they're always like getting ready to make queens in case their queen's like on the verge or on the way out. She's gonna die or something. So what they'll do is they'll like produce this royal jelly, feed it to her specifically, and then she grows differently than any other bee. So they'll have like 5 of these like virgin queens being like kind of, I guess, groomed at the same time. And then the first one to like chew its way out of its little peanut looking cell, it'll go and it'll sting all the other ones and kill them. And then it'll go find its mother, kill her, and then it'll take off, do the whole mating thing, come back, and she's the new queen.
Interesting.
So it's really it's strange. But
so she only like makes like around 30 babies or whatever you're gonna say, or baby bees you're saying?
Well, no, she'll lay like 1,500 eggs a day.
1,500. Oh, 1,500 a day.
A day. Yeah, she'll only mate with like 30 guys.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And then she's good. Like each male bee, I guess, gives her about a million sperms.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that's
quite a bit.
Yeah, so like 30 of them, 30 million. She's good for life.
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
Yeah, it's
that's quite the load.
Oh, that's crazy. So yeah, that's what she does, and then that's her purpose. She's like she's kind of a slave to the hive. They just tell her what to do, and she just lays eggs.
Like I would have thought that she's like the queen, like, you know, they do the work and I'm just chilling laying the eggs here, but it's kind of the opposite here. They're using
opposite.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. And like, so like honey, like what is honey? Like you know, obviously they go to do their pollination thing like over to the flowers, but like how does like honey get produced? Like how does that work? Like
Yeah. So honey, the way it works is honey is first off nectar that's inside of a flower.
Okay.
And flowers are smart. Mother Nature's smart. So what flowers do is they're all bright and beautiful, and they actually attract different insects.
Okay.
And they want them to pollinate. So bees are perfect for that because they're covered in these furs. So when they go into a flower to get that nectar reward, at the same time they're getting dusted with pollen, but then they continue to go to the same flowers. Basically, bees, if like a single bee is pollinating like a dandelion field, and there's other like flower species there, it's only going to go to the dandelions until they've exhausted that source, and then they'll go to a different type of flower. Okay. So it works in the flower's favor because now they're collecting nectar from each flower, they're spreading that pollen, and then they're taking it and going back to the hive, and that's basically what they're doing. So nectar is a really liquidy form of honey. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they bring it back to the hive, they have it in their stomach, and they actually regurgitate it into the hive, into the cell, and then they use their wings, the ones that are in the hive, not the foragers, but the like worker bees. They stay in the hive and they fan down the nectar until it reaches about a 17.8% moisture content. Like it's like down to a literal science.
And they know, like, how do they know? Like, it's just like
they know.
They just know.
They know. It's like 100% nature and just like instinct. But they'll fan it down and it'll become like thick. It'll become honey. Right. And then once it's honey, they actually cap it with wax to preserve it. Okay. And then that's what we do. We then take those frames from them, which are all this beautifully capped kind of honeycomb, and that's how it's gotten there.
Okay, that's so interesting. Like I've never I was just so fascinated when you were talking about bees when we first met, maybe the second time we met. And you're also, I remember you telling me like there's different, like they all have different jobs right in the hive. Like, can you explain us like the jobs that they have?
Yeah. Okay, so first off, we obviously have the queen bee,
of course,
just her. When a bee is born, bees live for about 40 days.
Yeah, I Googled that because I wanted to do a little bit of research before I came. Yeah, between 40 or it said 28, but I believe you a little bit more.
It's not long.
Yeah,
like,
it's
it could
really
even
short.
Be less. Yeah, and so like in that short period of time, when they're born as like a baby bee, like when they first come out of that cell because they're kind of like butterflies. So they start off as an egg, they go into like a pupation stage where they're a larvae, and then after I think it's about 21 days, the bee will like chew its way out of the little capping, and you get this little yellow bee that looks kind of like almost like a little baby duckling. They're really cute and they're kind of like confused. And so their first job, because they have all this like food in them that they've been fed by the nurse bees, so they become nurse bees. So basically they're like full of all these like good secretions of enzymes, and they start like literally regurgitating that into all the other baby bee cell hives or cells, and then they also feed the queen. So then as they get a little bit older, there's different areas they can kind of go to. So some of them become foragers. They go and they forage for either honey, they forage for pollen, they forage for propolis, which comes from trees, or they forage for like water. So they'll grab all these different components. There's other things they forage for too, but like there's so many different details. But anyway, so they'll do that. Some of them become undertaker bees, which is literally they find dead larvae and bees in the hive and they physically pull it out of the top of the hive and ditch it, and then they're basically condemned from all the other bees because they're these like weird disease carrying bees. So they just do that for the rest of their lives until they die. The undertakers. And then you have the guard bees, which are usually the bees that later in their like 40-day stage life, and they sit at the front and they defend from any other bees that don't belong there, from like wasps, from anything really. What else? You have like just the worker bees who are always building. So when bees consume as a hive, when they consume 8 pounds of honey, they actually create 1 pound of wax. And so the way beeswax is made is that as they consume honey, it actually flakes off of their abdomens. So beeswax is produced in their body and it comes out of their like pores basically. And they kind of like take it, they can make it all malleable with their little teeth in their hands, and then they construct their beehive out of it. So they create everything that they use.
That's crazy. So they just stick to that one job like pretty much the whole 48 days, or
pretty much, yeah. Until they either like they die or so these are all female bees, I should say.
Wait. So that was just the female bees.
So so the whole, it's like, what is it, a matriarchy? That's the word.
Yeah,
right?
I guess.
So it's all women.
Okay,
so
cool. Wait, so all bees are women?
Except for the drones. That's what we call them, the male bees.
That's so cool.
So all the bees you see like foraging on flowers and stuff, those are all female bees. And that goes for every type of bee in the world. They're all female. But then you have the drones, which are the male bees, and they're a little bit bigger than your average bee. So a lot of people think they're wasps or bumblebees.
Yeah.
So the reason they're big is so they can match the queen's size because she's bigger.
Yeah.
They also have these huge eyes so they can find the queen.
Okay.
They don't have stingers. They don't forage. They don't do anything but mate. So their only job is to mate. And once they mate, they die.
Oh my god!
And the ones that don't mate at the end of the season, because they don't contribute in any way to like hibernation and like storing food or like foraging for food, the females literally push them out of the hive, and they just like get starved and freeze. And you find like piles of them like in front of hives because they've just been like
just pushed on the edge.
They didn't do their job. They were supposed to mate, and they didn't do it.
Oh my god!
So they kind of didn't contribute.
So they just get kicked out, dead, and then on to the next ones.
That's
pretty
it.
much.
That's
okay.
it. Yeah.
Interesting. And then so what I was gonna say, like obviously like bees, they have like their little enemies or whatever, like wasps and everything. Like what do they face? Like obviously like change of environment, but also like wasps. Can you tell me a little bit more, like what kind of challenges they face? Like
yeah. So honeybees in particular, a little like less known fact is that honeybees are not native to North America. Oh. All of our honeybees are imported from either Asia. I get mine from New Zealand and Australia.
Okay.
So they get shipped here. So the biggest kind of like factor they face is that it's so cold in Canada that normally in these other climates they can, like for example Africa, bees can be doing their thing year long,
right,
unless there's a drought, but still it's warm. Here we get our winters, so they don't harvest in the winter, they hibernate.
Right.
So that's a huge challenge because when they're stuck in their hive, they can't defecate, so they actually get like constipated, like humans, and so they get sick from that. They also have like a huge buildup in like mites. Varroa mite is one of the biggest killers. It's basically like a vampire sucking bug that latches onto them, and to compare it to us, it's like if you had a dinner plate size bug attached to you sucking your blood. That's what it is for a bee. So they do that to them from like a young stage. They'll actually creep into their cells where the larvae is. And when the bee hatches, the baby bee, it'll have mites all over it that have been literally like sucking the life out of it for its whole life so far. So it's a really bad parasite. And so that's one of the biggest things we deal with is we're always trying to kill these mites. We're always medicating to kill mites.
Right.
And then of course, like, yeah, we have predators. Like wasps are huge. I've had 2 hives this year get totally wiped out by like yellow jackets.
Okay.
And they just go in there. They're carnivorous. They'll literally go in. They'll grab like a larvae and they'll fly out of the hive with it. They like steal the young. They'll kill the bees. They'll eat the bees. They'll kill each other. They'll eat each other. It's gross. Wow. Yeah.
And like, so how do the wasps get here? Is it the same thing like from Asia and other countries in the world, or is it like from what you know, like what do you think?
From what I know there's that one that everyone's freaking out about, the hornet. Right. That everyone's like, oh, he's not from here, or she's not from here, but like all these yellow jackets, they're from here. They're native. Like this is their territory. Oh. But the thing is, in the wintertime, especially this year when our fall was like really strange, we went from like a heat wave straight into winter. So things were kind of blossoming, then everything died. And there wasn't really like enough time for all these animals to forage and get ready for winter. So these wasps are now going into the beehives and they're like stealing everything from them. So it kind of becomes like who's stronger and who can take what from who. Right. So wasps are bigger, they're stronger, they can sting more, they're a little more aggressive, and so they just go in and they attack. They take everything. So, and they're native, so they can survive the winters a bit better than bees. They don't need human help. Right. Whereas a bee colony that doesn't have a hive built by humans probably won't make it through our winters.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like do wasps like live like together, or are they more like I'm just curious, like are they like in packs as well, or are they more individual style kind of thing, or
depending on the wasp? The yellow jackets, like the ones that bug you at a barbecue, those ones live similar to how honeybees do. They're usually those kind of paper nests you might find, or they burrow in like usually like roofs or people's houses, or like they sometimes live underground too, but they're very intricate. Like they'll build very similar to like a beehive, but they use like some kind of paper they make. I don't know if they produce it themselves or if they like harvest and make it, but they have a queen. Okay. And in the winter, from what I understand, is the queen's the only one that stays alive. Oh. All of them die off, but they basically like get her prepared to go through winter. Okay. And then she's got enough food and stuff, and she's bigger than all of them. Like she's gross. Yeah. And then they basically like leave her, I guess, to live there, and then when she starts laying eggs during the winter, and then they all hatch, and then she has like a whole new like set of children to take care of her. So they're kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
Similar to bees, but I guess the reason I say disgusting is because like they're just so aggressive and mean.
Yeah.
But they do pollinate. Like wasps are a huge part of our ecosystem. They eat mosquitoes. They eat little bugs that we don't want around. They eat roadkill. They do a lot of good things, and they pollinate. But they're just like extra aggressive.
This might be a stupid question, but do they make honey?
No.
No, they don't. They don't.
A lot don't. No.
Okay.
But because they eat other things, but they'll take honey.
Right.
They'll steal the honey.
Don't want to produce it. They just want to steal it.
Yeah, they just steal it. But there's other bees, like even like bumblebees, and bumblebees are native to here.
Okay.
They'll make honey, but they'll only make it for themselves.
Oh.
Honeybees are like the only species of bee that actually produces excess honey, and they just keep producing it. That's why you can like take their honey and then give them like an empty box to fill, and they'll just fill it.
Right.
Like they're like bull workers. That's why the human race has domesticated them, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, so do you guys only like harvest honey from those bees, or like do you guys from everybody? Like, how does that work? Like,
so like from honeybees?
Yeah, exactly. Like so for bees that produce honey, because you said others do produce honey. Do you guys only do you raise those bees, like the ones that are native from another country?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I only raise honeybees, and I only harvest from my honeybees.
Cool.
Yeah, because you could try and domesticate other types of bees, but it's not as easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like why do you think it's like what's challenging about the other ones?
They're just like, for example, bumblebees can't be moved around. They're great pollinators. Like bumblebees are one of the best pollinators.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons we have bees out here from other countries is because honeybees are excellent pollinators as well.
Right.
But bumblebees, they can pollinate specific native flowers here that honeybees can't really pollinate, because bumblebees they shake. So if you ever watch a video, they actually shake the flower and the pollen comes out, and they get the nectar inside. So it's just like a total different like approach to pollination.
Okay.
But then honeybees, they can be moved around. You can put them in boxes. They survive moves. If you move a bumblebee nest, it might die.
Really?
So they're a little more sensitive. Other bees, like they live underground, so you can't put them in a nest. Whereas like a honeybee, you have these boxes that we've made for them, and they're like one of the only species that we can actually pick up, put on a truck, move to a new field, pollinate that field, get a bunch of honey from there, put them back on another truck, drive them like 12 hours up to Edmonton, and then do the whole thing all over again. So you can move them around.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, what's like, so you obviously like with your honey business, like you do it here in like British Columbia or even Vancouver or the surrounding areas. Like, is there like a really good spot to raise bees? Like, is there a specific like climate that works best for that, or is like, can you do it like obviously not in the winter, but is there like other specific spots that you can just farm them, I guess, or grow them, I guess, or raise them? Sorry, I should say raise them.
No, it's good. Yeah. So Vancouver is a really unique spot because our winters are so mild, but our rain's really bad. So there's different problems that come with the rain. But here in Vancouver, we have a longer kind of summer season because our snow isn't here after like what? February sometimes. That's true. Yeah. So like we can start breeding bees here. So Vancouver's a great place for that, for like getting your bees ready to go. And then like in the summer, we have so many different crops and stuff. So I keep my bees in Langley, and there's so much around there. And so like the bees are going to the blueberries, they're going to the wild blackberries, they're going to the cranberries. There's so much to check out for them. But the problem is it's in Alberta. It's where the honey belt is. It's what they call the honey belt. It extends from northern Alberta all the way down through the prairie provinces, and it's where all the canola and the sweet clover grows, and that grows like in abundance all year round. So there's no shortage of it. So bees do excellent out there. But at the same time, when winter hits, like it's a total other game for them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So like maybe we can like transition a little bit into like your business. Like,
sure.
So how did that start? Like obviously you did your like the school and everything. And when did you like finally decide like this is what I want to do? Like this is not obviously your full-time job, right? But like what made you decide to like this is what I want to do, like as a side hustle, I should say?
So I signed up for this course, and I was kind of like, okay, this will be kind of cool to check out, learn. And I just got like obsessed with it. Like I got like super passionate about it, and I started reading and I started talking about it a lot. And then when I got into school, it was even cooler because there was like probably 12 of us in the class. It was pretty small, and everyone was like somebody from like East Van or like Maple Ridge, and we all wanted to like have a little side business going. So and our teacher, he was like started off as he was a police officer once upon a time, and he became a beekeeper. So he was really inspirational with like the business, and he was a good business guy. So he taught us like everything on how to start a small business, and then also like how to do all these side things, like how to produce pollen, how to make beeswax candles, how about talking about getting into farmers markets and doing all that? So I was like, this is so cool. So when I went and worked for my boss out in Alberta, I came back and I was like, okay, I'm going to buy some hives next year. We also had the opportunity in school to build like all the equipment we needed.
Like literally build like the little hut? Or
yeah.
What is that called? Sorry?
It's called a beehive.
Beehive, obviously. Sorry,
we call them supers or boxes. I guess you call it a box.
I guess so.
But yeah, so we built all those. I built all the platforms for them, built all the lids. And then our teacher, he was going to like charge us for the material, and he ended up just paying for all of it. So I built enough to have 10 beehives, like enough equipment to have 10 beehives, which probably would have cost me a few grand.
Wow.
So it was super nice of him. And yeah, so I did all this stuff, and I like basically ordered my bees. So the next year they showed up, and I was lucky enough that my dad, his buddy from work, has 15 acres out in Langley, and he just like loves animals. He's retired now, and he was basically like, yeah, you can keep the bees out here. And the way it works with beekeeping in the Lower Mainland is that if I keep bees on a property, I can actually write off their income tax for them because there's farming taking place.
Okay.
So their farm tax, because they're on ALR land, agricultural land, I can actually write off those taxes that they would be paying if they weren't doing any kind of production on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I write off 8 acres of his land.
Whoa.
And I do all my harvesting out there. I do all my extraction out there. And it's awesome because he's retired. So he will call me every other week being like, hey, Casey, so like this is what's going on with the bees. And just so you know, like I'm looking out for it. Maybe you should come down here. And I'm like, okay, thanks. So he's awesome. If there's wasps on the property, he like hunts them down and kills their nest. And he like,
so sick.
He's been out there with a vacuum a few times, sucking up wasps that try to go and attack the bees, or he'll sit out there and just make sure they don't get. He's great. Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of neat opportunities in that way to like. There's a lot of places you can keep hives. So I've always had different people approach me.
Right.
So yeah, basically I have a place to keep them. That really inspired me to get more of them.
Yeah.
And then I had like a great network of people to start selling honey to via like work, basically.
Cool.
And then friends and family, and yeah, it's just kind of
so
opened.
Sick.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So how do you purchase like you know, when you just started, you just go on Google and like, did you know already like where to buy them? Like how, because you said you bought them in New Zealand and where was the other spot?
Australia.
Like how does that, like how do you know you have to buy them there, and why there specifically?
So it's kind of a known thing in the industry that they get shipped in from those countries. They come in either like big tubes that almost look like present wrapping tubes, or they come in little boxes. So there's all sorts of hobby beekeeper stores, I guess you'd call them. So I basically went to one and said, hey, look, I want to order like, or you can do it online even. You can like type in you want 10 and then just do the down payment on the credit card.
Okay.
And then you just show up the night they arrive. So they'll send you all these letters being like, hey, the bees are going to be here. The plane's coming in. Everyone who's purchased bees needs to come here. We'll show you how to like open them, how to like pour them into the hives. And then you take your bees and you go straight to your bee yard and you dump them into all your empty hives.
Okay.
So yeah, I ordered them, showed up. I think I had like a small Honda CRV, and I had like all my beehives. I started with like 10 of them, and they're all sitting in the back, and you can hear them buzzing.
Was it loud?
It's loud. And of course, like some of the boxes break, so then you have like bees crawling around inside your car, and I'm like driving on the highway like in the dark, because you have to pour them in the dark because otherwise they fly away. They don't fly in the dark, so you just pour them all in there. You do it all at night. You're wearing a headlamp, and yeah, it's crazy. So then I had 10 beehives.
Okay. Why don't they fly at night?
The way bees operate is they have their front eyes that we always see. They also have eyes on the top of their head, and that's what keeps them balanced. So the sunlight is basically what allows them to fly, and they're able to like kind of navigate their, I guess, their surroundings. It's like their equilibrium.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then so like, what's been like some of like the biggest highlights of starting that little like your business pretty much? Like when did you first start? Sorry, like what year was it?
I think I went to school I was thinking of this earlier.
Okay,
2015
cool.
is when I started.
It's not too long ago.
Not too long ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's been like the biggest highlights that you've had since starting that business? Like,
I think it's like this personal growth that I've really seen in myself. Like I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I went and did all this by myself. I've gotten so many weird opportunities as well that have come from beekeeping. I actually started a business with a couple, and one of them was from school I went to. And so we did we started a bee pollen business called Corbicula, and we basically started harvesting and producing bee pollen, and it became huge. Like, they're still doing it. I've left because I'm now doing my own thing with electrical and my own business, but we would do all the farmers markets, and every goal I set in this business, I like hit. Like, I was like, I want to be in the Vancouver farmers markets. I want to be doing like X amount of farmers markets every like week. I got into every single farmers market in Vancouver.
Give me a high five.
It was amazing because
That's
it's hard to do.
Yeah.
I had to go in. I had to pitch your idea. Then I got into all the Port Moody, all the Coquitlam, all the New West, Langley. I got into like farmers trade shows all around Vancouver. We got all of our products into like stores and stuff too. With my honey, I started doing that initially as well. I like signed up for every farmer's market I knew, and I started in North Delta because that's where I lived. And then I like started doing that. I got all these contacts, which I still have, and it just got the ball rolling, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was really cool. Yeah.
And what's been like the hardest thing like since starting that business? Like, has it been like, you know, like obviously you build the beehives, but like, is it like raising the bees? Is it abstracting the honey? Is it like sales? Like, what was, or marketing? Like, what's been like the hardest part about starting your business?
I would say so first off, I hate extracting honey. It's like the one thing. Love honey, do not like. It's heavy, it's sticky. The bees like find you and they steal it back, and you just get like swarmed by them. So honey is the worst, but that was my biggest struggle. So when I started this business, I lived in like a basement suite near UBC, and I kept my bees in Langley. So I would drive out there twice a week, and I didn't really know how I was going to extract it. I have a machine. It's like a centrifugal machine which spins the honey out. But what I was doing for like a number of years, pretty much until this year, is I would go to my yard. I'd take all the honey from the bees. Then I would bring that honey with me to my house or apartment, and I would then extract it in my house. So I'm talking like a couple 100 pounds of honey that I'm now carrying up the stairs into my like yard or into my kitchen basically, and then or in my yard, and I'd then be extracting it. Then afterwards I'm taking all these empty frames back to Langley to deal with it. So it was like a lot of just crazy work. I was just being really hard on myself, and I probably could have found a better solution, which I have now, but it was a lot, and that was a lot of planning. And I was always like, every time honey season rolls around, like the extraction in August, I was always like, oh my god, I can't do this.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess like, how long will it take you to like, from like the start of the season till you start, like, I guess not canning, but putting them in jars? Like, how long does that take? Like, what's the process like?
So I guess I open my hives probably in like April. They're hibernating until about April, March. And then I'll start to extract in August. So the busiest times are like the summer, because you always want to kind of be on top of them. It's like once a week you got to be out there. And then the honey extraction is like August. And I usually do it one day. Some beekeepers will extract like throughout the summer. But depending on the season, like this year we didn't get sun till June. So
late.
Yeah, it was a little late. And I also didn't have a great setup. So before I like only wanted to do it once. This year, now I'm extracting on the property where my bees are. It's a lot easier, so I could probably do it twice.
Nice. So you just like get it all done, like pretty much. You're there. You don't have to bring it back home.
Exactly.
Like, okay. And how do you find like this machine that like gets all the honey? Like, do you just go on Craigslist and just Google that, or is there like a specific store for that, or like how did you?
Same thing with the bees. You can buy it from like beekeeping stores.
Okay.
But I actually sourced it out on Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
And I found some guy who had one, and it can extract 3 frames at a time.
Okay.
So in a box of honey, you have 10 frames. It can extract 3 of those at once.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And how long does that take? Sorry, you were probably gonna say that. How long does it take? I'm sorry, if you do it. I heard. Yeah. How long does that take for it to abstract?
So it used to take 10 minutes per side, but I found out my machine was like kind of not working, and my dad fixed it for me, and it only takes 2 minutes per side now.
Okay.
So that's another thing I discovered this year.
Okay.
So it's not very long. I think I got 200 pounds extracted this year in probably like 2 hours.
That's a lot.
And I had a couple girls helping me from work,
nice.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
So we just whipped through it, and yeah, it was great. And you get like beeswax with it too. So there's like a lot of steps to extracting honey. But when you're organized, it's like really good.
So do you just sell honey, or do you make do you use like the wax to make stuff as well? Like what do you do in your business?
So with my business, I have the honey, obviously. Bee pollen I'll do some years. I'll trap the pollen. And then I'll also propolis is another. It's basically like a sap that's really good for your overall health. And then also candles. I'll do candles. Yeah.
And what's been like the best seller, like out of all these things? Like what do people come back for the most?
Mostly the honey,
okay.
But people always ask for pollen. So hopefully I can get a little more into that later in the years.
Okay.
But we'll see. It's a lot more work.
Right.
But normally honey, Christmas time, honey as gifts. People love it. Flu season, it's good. So
right.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of honey? Like for health wise?
So honey is super antibacterial. It's great for like sore throats. It's a good form. It is sugar. Like
right.
Don't get me wrong, it's totally sugar, but it's a healthier form of sugar because of the pollen, because of the wax, because of the enzymes from the bees. Raw honey has a lot more like beneficial things in it than just like straight up sugar.
Right.
So it's antibacterial, so it helps with like sore throats. It helps with burns. You can put it if you got burnt. You can put it on cuts. It's good for your skin. It's very acidic, so it's good as like a facial wash as well. Yeah, there's like endless.
Wait, how would you do the facial wash? Like, how does that? Have you done it before?
Yeah.
Okay, how does it work?
I just lather honey on my face and leave it for like 20 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
And then you just wipe it off and you're like, oh, I smell good. And like, it's like a sugar scrub. You could even put like a little bit of sugar in there, I guess. And you can kind of give it a scrub feel.
I'm going to try that. Like,
yeah.
I moisturize with my own stuff, but I'd love to try that out, honestly. That sounds so interesting. And you smell good too. I mean, that's a win-win situation.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. What are your plans for this? Like, are you, because I know you're doing your electrician now, you're doing your course. Whereabouts are you in that?
I'm in third year, so next year I'll get my red seal.
Let's go. I'm excited for you.
I'm excited too to be done with this schooling.
Right.
But as for bees, like I think the biggest reason why I left the other company was because I just like having a side kind of hustle, but also I like just doing the bees as a hobby. I don't want to grow it so I have to quit my day job, but I want to do it so like I can just keep producing honey on the side. I'm kind of just happy where I'm at.
That's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Be cool maybe to have a couple retail stores, but like there's really no expectations. Like I've kind of done everything I wanted to with the company I started, and then I'm just kind of coasting for now. One day I'd love to have like a house to myself where I could like walk outside and have all my bees like out there and then maybe do tours. I've always wanted to go into elementary schools and talk to kids about bees.
You'd be so good at that.
I'd love it. It'd be great. So or like have like, I don't know, like a bed and breakfast, and like one of the features can be like you can come and beekeep and like learn to beekeep.
That's
so
different.
I guess the biggest goal I haven't done yet is having like a huge event. I want to have an event. I want to invite everyone I know, and I want to teach people like about the bees and have them the opportunity to like get inside the hive, take some pictures with the frames, and then just kind of educate people.
Mm-hmm. You can do a lot of cool things. I'm just trying to think like marketing aspects as well. Like you can do so many different things, and you have your Instagram going, which is super sick. Like I think like doing events and stuff like that, like bring everybody and just like teach people how to do that. I'd love if you can invite me one day. I'd be more than happy to come.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Xander, who's behind the camera, great guy, doesn't say hi because he's camera shy for now, but we'll get him on eventually.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd be more than happy to come in and check that out and everything. Well, honestly, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, no problem.
I hope you had a good time. This was the first episode, so hopefully you weren't too nervous.
No.
I was probably oh yes, Casey, can you get your honey? Can you bring your honey?
Yeah, you want me to grab it?
So Casey's just gonna get some honey right now. Yeah, super pumped. That was the first episode. Definitely gonna be more coming out. And this is the honey. This is so cute. So
it's my little.
Oh, Casey. Maybe the mic, maybe. It's okay. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
So this is the honey. It's a little crystallized right now, which is basically just the crystals start to glucose and the sugar glucose. It starts to crystallize, preserve itself. So as it gets cold, especially. But yeah, this is like a blueberry, blackberry. There's about a mint in here. There's maple. I don't call it ditch honey, but it's kind of what it is. It's like everything that exists like around. And then, yeah, I just kind of decorated. Here's my logo. My little KCB logo. I remember making this when I worked on the train.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, on the breaks or whatever?
Yeah, and I showed everyone. I was like, what do you guys think? And everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
So, first of all, you should say your Instagram handle. We'll put it in the video. Ooh. Yeah, what's your Instagram handle?
It's Spark Bee, because it's like spark, like a sparky, which is electrician, and then like bee, because then I can promote both those things. I don't have too many things going, because otherwise it's annoying.
Yeah, no, this is so cool. Like, honestly, again, like I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this has been great.
Hope you had a good time. I really appreciate you sharing all these different stories, and I've learned a lot about bees.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a little bit more research, but I just also wanted to learn as much. So hopefully I didn't sound too much of a newbie here. But
no,
really appreciate it. And yeah, you said your Instagram handle, so thank you so much again. Guys, thank you so much for watching the first episode. Again, there'll be many more to come. Just trying to figure out the system here and how to do more. Lots of other guests like restaurant owners. We got, I don't want to say too much, but we have a lot of cool things coming on. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time at Table 604 Podcast. Yeah.